"How ill is he?" I asked.
"You can come if you like," my mother said. "It's entirely up to you." Despite the casual voice, the carefully maintained distance, it sounded closer to a plea than I was used to. "I'll arrive tomorrow," I said, making up my mind. "If you're sure—"
She betrayed no relief, however. No welcome. "I am sure."
"Very well."
I paid the phone call's ransom into Donald's stringy, outstretched palm, and returned to my laden, ancient, and battered four-wheel drive outside. It had good gears, good brakes, good tires, and little remaining colour on its thin metal flanks. It contained, at that moment, food for 2 weeks, a big cylinder of butane gas, supplies of batteries, bottled water, and insect killer, and 3 brown cardboard boxes, parcel delivery, replenishing the tools of my trade. I painted pictures. I lived in a broken-down, long-deserted shepherd's hut, known as a bothy, out on a windy Scottish mountainside, without electricity. My hair grew to my shoulders. I played the bagpipes. My many and fairly noble relations thought me weird. Some are born weird, some achieve it, others have weirdness thrust upon them. I preferred solitude and paint to outthinking salmon and shooting for food. I had only half inherited the country skills and courtesies of my ancestors. I was the 29-year-old son of the dead 4th son of an earl, and I had no unearned wealth. I had 3 uncles, 4 aunts, and 21 cousins. Someone in such a large and conventional family had to be weird, and it seemed I'd been elected. I didn't mind. Mad Alexander messes about with paints, and not even oils, my dear, but those frightfully common acrylics. If Michelangelo could have laid his hands on acrylics, I said, he would have joyfully used them. Acrylics were endlessly versatile and never faded. They out-virtued oils by furlongs. Don't be ridiculous, Alexander. I paid my uncle, the present Earl, known as himself, a painting a year, as rent for the ruin I inhabited on his estate. The painting was done to his choice. He mostly asked for portraits of his horses and dogs. I quite liked to please him. Outside the post office on that dry, cloudy, cold morning in September, I sat in my old Jeep-type jalopy and did my paperwork, opening my letters, answering them, and sending off the replies. There were 2 checks that day for work delivered, which I dispatched to the bank, and an order from America for 6 more paintings to be done at once, like yesterday. Ridiculous, mad Alexander, in his weird way, actually quietly prospered, and I kept that fact to myself. The paperwork done, I drove my wheels northwards, at first along a recognizable road, then a roughly gravelled stretch, then up a long, rutted and indistinct track, which led nowhere but to my unnamed home in the Monaliah Mountains. Between Loch Ness and Aviemore, I usually explained. And no, I hadn't seen the monster. Whoever in the mists of time had first built my bothy had chosen its position well. It backed straight into an elbowed granite outcrop that sheltered it from the north and east, so that winter blizzards mostly leapfrogged over the top. In front lay a sort of small stony plateau that on the far side dropped away steeply, giving me long views of valleys and rocky hills, and of a main road far below. The only problem with the road, that served to remind me that an outside world existed, was that my dwelling was visible from it, so that far too often I found strangers on my doorstep, hikers equipped with shorts, maps, half-ton walking boots, and endless energy. There was nowhere left in the world unpenetrated by inquisitive legs. On the day of my mother's postcard, I returned to find 4 of the nosy species poking around without inhibitions. Male. Blue, scarlet, orange backpacks. Glasses. English regional voices. The days when I'd offered tea, comforts, and conversation were long gone. Irritated by the invasion, I drove onto the plateau, stopped the engine, removed my keys from the ignition, and walked towards my front and only door. The four men stopped peering into things and ranged themselves into a ragged line ahead of me across my path.
"There's no one in," one of them called. "It's all locked up."
I replied without heat,
"What do you want?" "Him as lives here,"
one said loudly.
"Maybe that's you,"
said another. I felt the first tremble of something wrong. Their manner, subtly, wasn't the awkwardness of trespassers caught in the act. There was no shuffling from foot to foot. They met my eyes not with placating apology, but with fierce concentration. I stopped walking and said again,
"What do you want?"
The first speaker said,
"Where is it?"
I felt a strong, primitive impulse to turn tail and run, and wished afterwards that I'd listened to the wisdom of prehistory. But somehow one doesn't easily equate knobbly-kneed hikers with positive danger. I said,
"I don't know what you mean."
And I made the mistake of turning my back on them and retracing my steps towards the jeep. I heard their heavy feet scrunching on the stony ground behind me, but still didn't truly believe in disaster until they clutched and spun me round and purposefully and knowledgeably punched. I had a sort of splintered composite view of intent, malevolent faces, of grey daylight reflecting on their incongruous glasses, of their hard, bombarding fists, and of a wildly slanting horizon of unhelpful mountains as I doubled forward over a debilitating pain in the abdomen. Neck chop, jabs to the ribs, classic pattern, over and over, thud, merciless thud. I was wearing jeans, shirt, and sweater. They might as well have been gossamer for all the protection they offered. As for meaningful retaliation, read non-existent. I couldn't find breath. I swung at them in anger, but fought an octopus. Bad news. One of the men kept saying insistently, "Where is it? Where is it?" But his colleagues made it impossible for me to answer. I wondered vaguely if by it they meant money, of which I carried little. They were welcome to it, I thought groggily, if they would stop their attentions. I unintentionally dropped my small bunch of keys and lost it to a hand that grabbed it up with triumph. Somehow or other, I ended with my back against the jeep. No further retreat. One of them snatched handfuls of my hair and banged my head against metal. I clawed blood down his cheek and got a headbutt in return that went straight from my skull to my knees, buckling them like butter. Events became unclear. I slid to the ground, face down. I had a close view of grey granite stones and short, dry, struggling blades of grass, more brown than green. "Where is it?" I didn't answer, didn't move, shut my eyes, drifted. "He's out," a voice said. "Fat lot of help you are." I felt hands roughly searching my pockets. Resistance as an option promised only more bruises. I lay still, not wholly conscious, inertia pervading, angry but helplessly passive, nothing coordinating, no strength, no will. After a time of floating, I felt the hands on me again. "Is he alive?" "No thanks to you, but yes, he is. He's breathing." "Well, just leave him. Chuck him over there." Over there turned out to be the edge of the plateau, but I didn't realize it until I'd been dragged across the stones and lifted and flung over. I went rolling fast and inexorably down the steep mountain slope, almost bouncing from rock to rock, still incapable of helping myself, unable to stop, dimly aware of flooding with whirling, comprehensive pain. I slammed down onto a larger rock, and did stop there, half on my side, half on my stomach. I felt no gratitude. I felt pulverized, winded, dazed. Thought vanished. Some sort of consciousness soon came crazily back, but orderly memory took much longer.
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.